There were rules in that relationship. You just did not know you were the only one following them. You were expected to be available. They were allowed to disappear. You were expected to explain yourself. They owed you no explanation. You were expected to stay calm. Their outbursts were justified. You were expected to be loyal. Their behavior existed in a separate category that somehow never required the same standard. Comment now if you can relate. And the most damaging part was not the double standard itself. It was that you kept trying to make sense of it. You kept looking for the logic. You kept assuming that if you just communicated, behaved, and loved better, the rules would eventually apply equally. They never would have, because the inequality was not a flaw in the relationship. It was the architecture of it. Today I am going to show you exactly how that architecture works. Why is it built? How does it stay invisible for so long? And what it costs you while you are living inside it. The first double standard is availability. You were expected to respond quickly, to be present, to prioritize their needs when they arose. Missing a call, taking too long to reply, and being genuinely unavailable even for legitimate reasons created tension, created accusations, created the feeling that you had done something wrong. But when they disappeared, it was different. They needed space. They were busy. They had things going on, and if you expressed that their unavailability affected you, you were needy, you were clingy, you were too much. Dr. Harriet Lerner, a psychologist who has studied relationship dynamics for decades, describes this pattern as asymmetric accountability. One person is held to a standard of constant emotional availability, while the other reserves the right to engage on their own terms. Over time, you reorganize your entire life around their schedule, their moods, their availability, while your own need for consistency and presence is classified as a personality flaw. The second double standard is emotional expression. Their anger was valid, always, even when it was disproportionate, even when it came from nowhere, even when it landed on you for something that had nothing to do with you. It was understandable. It was explained away. It was your job to manage around it. Your emotions were a different story. Your sadness was manipulation. Your frustration was an attack. Your hurt was drama. Your tears were a performance. Research on emotional invalidation from the University of Washington found that chronic dismissal of a partner's emotional experience is one of the strongest predictors of psychological harm in relationships, not occasional dismissal. Chronic, systematic dismissal of one person's emotions, while the others are treated as legitimate and important. You were not allowed to feel inside that relationship. You were allowed to absorb. The third double standard is loyalty and trust. You were expected to be completely transparent. Your phone, your friendships, your whereabouts, your history, all of it was subject to scrutiny. Jealousy from their side was reframed as love, protectiveness, caring deeply. But if you asked the same questions, if you expressed similar concerns, you were controlling, you were insecure, you were paranoid. This double standard does something particularly insidious over time. It trains you to police yourself. You start preemptively explaining things, volunteering information they did not ask for, shrinking your social life to avoid triggering their suspicion. And because their behavior was never subject to the same scrutiny, you never had the information you needed to see the full picture. Coercive control researchers at the University of Bristol describe this as information asymmetry, as a control mechanism. When one person in a relationship has full access to the other while maintaining their own privacy, the power imbalance becomes structural. You were an open book, living with someone who kept every page locked. The fourth double standard is accountability. When something went wrong between you, the path to resolution always ran through you. You apologized, you reflected, you changed your behavior, you did the work. Their mistakes were explained, contextualized, minimized, or turned around so that somehow your reaction to their behavior became the issue that needed addressing. Dr. George Simon describes this as the accountability gap. The manipulator holds the target to a standard of self-reflection and behavioral change they themselves never meet. And because the target is a person with genuine empathy and a real desire for the relationship to work, they keep doing the work for both people. You grew, you reflected, you tried harder, and none of it changed the fundamental dynamic because the dynamic was never caused by your behavior in the first place. The fifth double standard is respect. Speaking to you in a dismissive tone was normal. Interrupting you was normal. Talking over you in front of others was normal. Making decisions that affected you without consulting you was normal. But if you responded in kind, even once, even mildly, it was remembered, brought up later, used as evidence of your character. You were expected to absorb disrespect without reacting and to treat them with a level of consideration they never extended to you. This standard, enforced consistently over time, does something specific to your self-perception. Research on chronic disrespect in close relationships shows that people who are repeatedly treated without basic regard begin to internalize that treatment as accurate. You start to believe that you deserve less consideration, that your comfort and dignity are less important, that asking for basic respect is asking for too much. You are not difficult, you are not demanding, you are a person asking to be treated like one. The sixth double standard is growth and change. You are expected to change constantly. Your communication style, your emotional responses, your boundaries, your friendships, your appearance, your ambitions, everything about you was subject to their feedback and was expected to be adjusted. But they stayed exactly the same. And if you ever suggested that they might look at their own behavior, pointed out a pattern, or asked them to grow in any direction, it was an attack. It was criticism. It was you being unsupportive. This double standard is the one that most clearly reveals the intent behind all the others. Because relationships require mutual growth, mutual accountability, mutual willingness to be uncomfortable and change. When only one person is expected to grow, the relationship is not a partnership. It is a renovation project in which only one wall is ever worked on. And the person doing all the renovating eventually looks up and realizes they have rebuilt themselves entirely around someone who never moved an inch. Here is what I want you to understand about all six of these double standards. They did not happen all at once. They were introduced gradually. Each one normalized the next. By the time the full system was in place, you had been inside it long enough that it felt like reality. That is how it stays invisible. The exit from double standard dynamics is not an argument. You cannot logic your way out of a system that was never logical to begin with. The exit is recognition followed by a very specific question. Am I willing to keep living under a set of rules designed to serve only one person? That question does not require their participation to answer. And if any part of what I described today felt familiar in ways that surprised you, there is something else you need to see. Because double standards do not just live in romantic relationships. They operate in workplaces, in friendships, in families. And the people who run them in one area of life almost always run them in others. The next video will show you exactly how this plays out at work, how covert manipulation operates inside professional environments, how to recognize it when your job title and your paycheck make it harder to walk away. Comment and subscribe for weekly deep dives into dark psychology, manipulation tactics, and psychological survival.